We're back with 4 more open God questions this evening. God doesn't make mistakes, so why does a baby conceived out of marriage get considered a mistake? If you're a doctor and decide not to perform a risky surgery and the patient dies, is it a sin that you didn't do the surgery? Could a divorced man become a priest? And is it a sin to smoke? And someone else asked similarly, what is the church's view on smoking? So let's get into it. God doesn't make mistakes, so why does a baby conceived out of marriage get considered a mistake? Yeah, I know I've explained this poorly in the past. It's really so fundamental. Like, people are not mistakes. Children aren't mistakes. The act of premarital sex would be a mistake, but the product of it would not be a mistake. In as much as that's a human person. No human person is a mistake. No one should consider a human person a mistake. Yeah, I have some quotes here from the Catechism. Let's see. Yeah, paragraph 366. The church teaches that every spiritual soul is created immediately by God. It's not, quote unquote, produced by the parents. So God actually is directly involved in the creation of every human person. He is creating their soul. And the soul is immortal. It doesn't perish when it separates from the body at death. Every human person, you've never met, like I think C.S. Lewis said, you've never met a mere mortal. Every human person that you've encountered is actually an immortal and destined for resurrection. So this includes every child, including those conceived out of wedlock. Here's another paragraph. Man and woman were made for each other. Not that God left them half-made and incomplete. He created them to be a communion of persons, in which each can be helpmate to the other, for they are equal as persons, bone of my bones, and complementary as masculine and feminine. In marriage, God unites them in such a way that by forming one flesh, they can transmit human life, be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. By transmitting human life to their descendants, man and woman, as spouses and parents, cooperate in a unique way in the Creator's work. So this would obtain still even if they weren't spouses, right? Transmitting human life, that means that you are cooperating in a unique way in the Creator's work. You're co-creating with God. So, yeah, that's never a mistake. Getting into the medical ethics. If you're a doctor and decide not to perform a risky surgery, the patient dies. This is a sin that you didn't do the surgery. So, the church in the catechism here has all of this organized under the euthanasia section. Euthanasia, remember, is mercy killing, quote unquote, putting somebody out of their misery or putting somebody out of their suffering. So killing persons so they won't suffer more. Direct euthanasia consists in putting an end to the lives of handicapped, sick, or dying persons. It is morally unacceptable. Then the church goes into all the things that aren't euthanasia, or what is related to euthanasia. And that's what I think this question is asking about. So an act or omission which of itself or by intention causes death in order to eliminate suffering. Causes death in order to eliminate suffering. Constitutes a murder gravely contrary to the dignity of the human person and to the respect due to the living God as creator. The error of judgment into which one can fall in good faith does not change the nature of this murderous act, which must always be forbidden and excluded. So the church here is saying, like, you could be wrong in good faith. So you didn't mean to be wrong, but you were wrong, and you do something or fail to do something which causes death in order to eliminate suffering. That's murder. It might be, though, that you just made a mistake, in which case you wouldn't be held responsible necessarily in the same way as someone who planned to kill somebody. But even that isn't really directly answering the question here. Not doing the surgery because it's risky. So the fact that it's risky changes it. And the church teaches that discontinuing medical procedures that are burdensome, dangerous, extraordinary, or disproportionate to the expected outcome can be legitimate. So it's okay to not do procedures that are burdensome, dangerous, extraordinary, we might say risky. The church is saying it's just the refusal of overzealous treatment. Here, one does not will to cause death. One's inability to impede it is merely accepted. So the key thing is, if you're a doctor, you shouldn't ever will to cause death. In fact, this is part of the Hippocratic Oath that you take if you're a healthcare professional. The first part of it is first to do no harm. So, yeah, if you decide not to do a risky surgery because you see the risks as being too great compared to what it would bring the patient, and so you opt out, and that person dies, it's not necessarily even sinful. People die. Patients die. You're a doctor, but you can't cure everyone. As long as you aren't willing to cause death, that's the big thing. And then also the church would say it should be the patient, ultimately, that makes that decision whenever possible. Or somebody who acts and makes decisions on behalf of the patient. So someone with power of attorney, a spouse, a trusted advisor, that sort of thing. Could a divorced man become a priest? So remember, for the church, divorce doesn't mean the marriage is over. For the church, you would have to have the marriage declared null, or get an annulment, or have it be annulled. Let's say a man and a woman are married, they get divorced, and then the church, they bring their marriage before the church, and the church says, yeah, this wasn't a marriage after all. You actually didn't understand the vows, or one of you was lying from the moment of the vows. So this was never a marriage. Both of you are free to marry again. The man at that point could sign up for the priesthood. It's another question of whether or not the church would agree to it. Every diocese has its own process of seminary and priestly formation. And yeah, a lot of people might start off as seminarians, but then later discern that they shouldn't become priests. It's only with the church's okay that they would become ordained in the last place, though. So a recent example of this, though, this is in Seattle, I want to say, in the Archdiocese of Seattle in 2013. This is exactly the situation happened. The father of two, he's married and then divorced and annulled and accepted into the priesthood. So it can and has happened. Last one, is it a sin to smoke, and what is the church's view on smoking? Bring this up. Yeah, the church says we have to respect the life of the body, but there's more to life than the body. We shouldn't sacrifice everything for the body's health. We should sacrifice enough to a reasonable amount, do what we can to make sure that we're healthy. But it's not like the end-all be-all. God is the end-all be-all. Love is the end-all be-all. And it says the virtue of temperance disposes us to avoid every kind of excess. Food, alcohol, tobacco, medicine. So, presumably all these things are good in proportion, or in moderation. So, yeah, the example I often use is cheesecake. It's a very unhealthy food, but in moderation, it's totally cool to have cheesecake. It's not a sin to eat cheesecake. It's a sin to overeat, and having too much cheesecake would certainly count as that. how do you know when it's like abusing it as opposed to just using it? Um, when you're addicted or yeah, like it enslaves you, where you lose your ability to control yourself. Alcohol, so this is where drunkenness would be the thing. Tobacco addiction, I believe, would be perhaps the best way of thinking about it. Um, so yeah, smoking a in general, like as a specific thing, like it's just, yeah, don't get addicted, avoid excess. The body's a gift, but it's not God. So in the same way that cheesecake or a beer in moderation isn't bad, um, presumably tobacco, according to the catechism, would fall under the same category. So, yeah, hope you enjoyed. I'll check back in. We got, I think, like 5 or 6 more Open God questions. Feel free to email me any that you continue to have.